Winter is coming.
Might just be the cold.
Winter is coming.
It's cold outside.
You don't know cold.
Winter is coming for him.
It's either me or this cold, and it doesn't appear to be going anywhere.
And winter is coming.
You're cold, Popovich.
Tis a bit nippy.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
That's cold.
Winter is coming.
Mm-hmm. I'm cold.
It's cold and it's wet.
Winter is coming.
You're crying because you're cold?
You're a long way from home. And winter is coming.
I imagine you might be rather cold.
And winter is coming.
Oh, that's all right, I'm fine.
You're not. You're freezing.
Well, winter is not only coming, winter is here. And of course, I'm talking about the great Russ Winter, and he'll be on momentarily. And you know, it's kind of a winter thing. I actually made a pot of ham and bean soup, and I had some this morning just before the show. And guess who else had some? Jasper. Jasper is a big ham and bean soup aficionado, and it's kind of a winter soup, right? Ham and bean soup in some ways. And if I look outside, it kind of looks like a little overcast, a little wintry, although if I step outside, it's going to be a bit warm and balmy and a little humid here in Texas. But enough with the weather. Before we bring on Russ, let's get a few words from our sponsor, or me in the voice of our sponsor, True Hemp Science. And True Hemp Science is your one-stop shop for all your CBD needs. And which reminds me, I got to get Russ some of this stuff. I got to talk to Chris and figure out how to get it there. But CBD, it's a wonderful addition to your health, your body, your everyday lifestyle. Hits you at a deep reset mode. And if you spend $100 or more, type in 15MINS and you will get a goodie bag with your order. You'll love the goodie bag. You get some of the magic gummies worth the price of admission. And $150 more gets you free shipping, and there's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. TrueHempScience.com, your one-stop shop for all of your CBD needs. Okay, let us Terry no longer. Oh, Terry kind of rhymes with Tariff. Speaking of which, here's our guy.
Tariff. No headgear today, huh? Don't have your ensemble.
My what?
Headgear.
My cap.
Yeah.
I was thinking, you know, I got this White Sox cap. This blue.
Oh, cool.
It's blue, and I was looking around for it, and I was trying to find it, and I couldn't find it. I'm like, you know, it's.
I kind of like the Indian one. That's like a collector's item.
No, so check this out. You'll dig this. In fact, you'll dig both of these because I have them right beside me. So if I wanted to go cap, I could. So this one, I'm actually going to go see I'm going to hang out with my son in June, and we're going to go see our beloved homeless Oakland A's playing Kansas City. So I have this Kansas City A's hat right here.
Oh, really? Kansas City Athletics.
Yeah. So
see, that was when I was a young boy, that was my team. They were terrible.
They were always terrible. They were always terrible. They were basically the farm system for the Yankees because they got Roger Maris from the and then of course, what did the Kansas City A's get? 0. But
so, as I've gotten older, particularly in recent years, I've really gotten into nostalgia a lot. And I'd like to go back, and one of the things I found was Kansas City Athletics radio, the radio programs and the games.
Oh wow!
Listen to some of that, and very familiar voices because they were pretty consistent with the announcers.
Yeah.
And I kind of did that. And then I kind of went back and found some clips of some of the old baseball stadiums around the country in the 50s and 60s and what that was like. And, of course, everybody's very well presented.
Yeah.
A lot of times the men even kind of go with their jackets on.
Oh, I mean, no, if you were like traveling, you were wearing suits.
Yeah.
Right. You were wearing suits. And in fact, if we're talking about Kansas City, Hank Stram, coach of the Chiefs, I think his father was a tailor. And so the Kansas City Chiefs all wore the same suit blazers with the Kansas City Chiefs logo. Like that's how they traveled, because Stram was kind of a fashion guy. But so yeah, I get to go to Ewing Kauffman Stadium. Have you ever been there where the Royals play?
Yeah. Yeah, that's where George Brett played. That one, is that it?
Yeah. They're still playing there, and
it's not a real great stadium, but it was okay. Good location, right off the freeway. You're not driving into the bowels of the town.
Yeah, in fact, I got this Airbnb, which is really kind of cool. It's like a 15-minute walk to the stadium. So that'll be cool.
So I was visiting my cousin who lived in Weatherby Lake, Missouri.
Yeah.
And we decided to go down in the wintertime to Kauffman Stadium to look around. I mean, I was kind of in a phase where I was kind of really into that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe the way you are now. I was like that then. And so we go into the stadium, and here comes George Brett.
Oh, cool.
I don't know what he was doing there. Maybe training, or
he's probably corking bats. That's what I think.
That guy could really hit.
Well, George Brett was. I'll tell you who else who could hit was his brother Ken, who was a pitcher, and Ken could hit. This is my latest edition, Russ. Look at this. I got this two-tone Cincinnati Reds cap. What do you think of that? That looks original. It is. It feels original. It feels like, I gotta say, it feels like somebody else probably wore it. But this is my latest edition, and and I got this blue Sox cap. I'm into kind of obscure caps.
Well, look, hey, let me get up a second, and I'll bring you my big collector's item.
Okay. All right. So we're having a little sports talk here before we get into the weeds with the topic of the day, the discussion that I know that you're all looking forward to, and we get to untangle that. Okay. So, all right, here we go. Show and tell time. What do you got?
I picked this up. This is a very good jacket that I picked up. This is my dad wore this. My dad was given this.
Kansas State, K-State. I love it.
Yeah, it's
look at
that. Very nice little jacket. Very well made. I mean, this is expensive.
Where did you get that? Did you get it on eBay or something?
No, I got it at my dad's funeral.
Oh, so that belonged to your dad?
Yeah, he wore it. So the Ghost of Texas also part of it.
The Ghost. Speaking of coaches, Greg Popovich just stepped down as coach of the Spurs. And there are millions of conservative sports fans across America that are thrilled that they don't have to listen to Greg Popovich lecturing them at every turn about either being white or having voted for Donald Trump, because Popovich started to turn his coaching platform into a bully pulpit. And a lot of these guys, Russ, are complete hypocrites, and I'll tell you why. When the whole Black Lives Matter thing was happening, right? Popovich was really ripping on white people, like you don't know how easy you have it. You don't understand your white privilege. I've been around this community my entire life, and blah, blah. I mean, we were really getting lectured by Greg Popovich. So I casually went over to the Spurs page, and I took a peep at Popovich's assistant coaches. He had one black coach.
Yeah.
One black assistant. I'm like, whoa, Greg. Now, granted, he did have Becky Hammond, a woman, and I think there's this weird conflation with trying to equate blacks and other quote unquote minorities with women in the LGBTQ world, which a lot of people on this side of the equation don't like. So, maybe Becky Hammond qualifies, but the only guy who is so-called black in the staff was Ime Udoka, who is now coaching for the Houston Rockets. And I just thought, you hypocritical motherfucker. Here you are lecturing to all of us about being white and white privilege, and you can only manage to have one black assistant?
Wow, that's amazing. Because they're players, they're players. And, for a long time it was kind of a club, though, definitely. White
yeah. Well, I mean, look, that ended pretty quickly because you had guys like Lenny Wilkins, Casey Jones, Bill Russell, right? Like basketball was the first sport to really kind of break that barrier with coaches. I think Willis Reed had a crack there. Wes Unseld was a general manager. Willis Reed was a general manager. You had Al Attles over in Golden State, where I watched the majority of my games. And Al Attles was a great guy. I loved Al Attles. So sometime in the late '60s, basketball said, "Hey, man, if you can coach, we don't care what color your skin is." Right? I got to show you this before we jump into the heavy stuff. So I just went to the Spurs website just for shits and giggles to see, have they removed the coach title from Popovich's name, and they haven't yet. But I went through their kind of executive team, like the people that are on the front in the executive staff, and I found this woman, and you are gonna get a kick out of this. Okay, so her name is Kara Allen, and this is her title: Chief People Impact and Belonging Officer.
Like a feel-good person, huh?
Can you? I mean,
she's the one that gives the players a hug when they're feeling down.
No, I think she's there to make sure that people who are not representative of mainstream society don't get short shrift inside the San Antonio Spurs. I've never heard of a chief people impact and belonging officer.
I mean, she looks like kind of nice, like maybe like a school teacher type, but yeah.
If I'm being completely honest, she's a very attractive lesbian.
Yeah, could be that too.
Yeah, it's like, here you go. We're going to give you.
I don't know. For some reason, I'm kind of drawn to her.
Well, and she's attractive. Come on, she's an attractive woman.
Yeah, nice hairstyle.
Yeah,
what a weird title.
So, what does your daughter do for a living? Well, she's the Chief People Impact and Belonging Officer for the San Antonio Spurs.
And you happen to score this find on this.
Are you? Oh, really?
You're amazing. You're an amazing researcher, Robert.
My curiosity knows no bounds, Russ.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh man! All right. So, have we gotten the? By the way, one more little sports piece here. This Denver Lakers series has been really something. Like really high level basketball. I don't know if you've caught any of it, but it's been incredible to watch these two teams go at it, and it's making a lot of the other playoff series, with maybe the exception of the Warriors Rockets, which is a contrast of age versus youth. But this Nuggets Clippers series is now tied at 3-3, going back to.
So good basketball, huh?
It is. It's really good basketball. really good basketball. And I don't know if you did you run across Rick Adelman when you were kicking around a little bit there with Tex?
No, I don't think I've ever met him or anything.
Rick Adelman's son is coaching the Nuggets now, and for a guy who's he's literally only coached the Nuggets for like 7 games because they fired Mike Malone, their coach, just as they're headed into the playoffs. Most bizarre thing I've ever seen. But it looks like the kid can coach.
He's just got him playing real well after 7 days, just coming right on the scene. Was he around before as assistant, or?
I think he was on the staff. He's really young. Like I think probably in his 30s. Cool. But he's been around basketball. You know, Rick was his dad, and Rick was a pretty good coach, and he coached the Trailblazers and the Kings, and had a lot of success.
Yeah, very traditional type coach.
Yeah. So his kid, and I saw his presser last night, sounded like he knew what he was doing. On the other hand, we got to talk about the Lakers and LeBron taking a first-round dump. I think LeBron's legacy is in jeopardy here. What are your thoughts on that? You got anything to chime in on that?
Well, he's kind of erratic. He's always been erratic, and probably his talent level is going down because he's getting older.
Yeah.
So sometimes these guys start acting out a little bit.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just hard. It's hard to play all these games. Your knees get sore, and you have different types of injuries.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of, I don't know. I have a hard. I don't like to come down too hard on these professional players. Can't imagine what it's like. I couldn't handle it.
Well, if you had the right HGH and steroidal injections
and the right salary to have a good attitude.
Well, the other thing too is these guys with that salary, they have the best trainers, they have the best medical equipment. So when I talk about medical equipment, like they have these PEMF beds and mats which accelerate the healing process. They can afford like the most cutting edge healing technology, hyperbaric chambers. I guarantee you LeBron James has a hyperbaric chamber in his home. And he's in there, 30 minutes a day, just getting pure oxygen to his body.
But all you have to do is get injured a little bit, have a tendon injury, have some, something comes loose in your Achilles tendon or your knee or whatever. And that just really has an effect on you. And then they don't heal very well. So I don't know.
Well, Curry banged his thumb up, I think about a week ago, and he's got it in a wrap. So every time he shoots, the Houston Rockets are coming down on his thumb. Right? They're doing that. It's like intentional. And apparently it's not illegal. Go figure. Right? But this is what you're talking about. It's not a huge injury, but it's a nagging injury, and it does affect his ball handling and his dribbling. So, but yeah, injuries can be very problematic, especially with a long season. All right. So shall we get serious, Russ? I know people are wanting us to get to the topic of the day. And so what we're going to do here is Russ is kind of keeping track of the tariff stuff, and he's going to give us the bit of the carnage.
Yeah, it's mostly data driven. I'm not going to pontificate about how awful Trump is, even though that's what I think, but I'm just going to give you the data,
right,
so people can see what's transpiring.
And Russ and I were having a bit of a text exchange on Twitter beforehand, and I think we're also going to explore the possibility here that there could be something even bigger than just Trump, trying to play the tariff bully. And maybe there is more of a staged kind of internecine sort of cooperation going on here. And when we get there, we'll bring it up. And I brought it up to Russ, and he thinks that there's some merit to this. So where do you want to start, Russ?
Oh, let's go up and let's start it out on the DMs. go up to where are you? Okay. Let's start on April 25th. I sent you a DM. We can kind of run down these quickly, pop them up on the screen.
Okay, let's see what we have here. Got a lot of DMs, Russ. A lot of DMs.
Yeah, I know. Ridiculous. Okay, so up there on April 25th, Spencer Hannikin, it shows Trump in the polls. So we got to get that up.
All right.
And he's really been slammed. He's had the rapidest drop in the first 100 days in office in the second term of any president. He had a pretty big drop in his first term, but now he's below that. Now it's about 38%. I think he's dropped another percent days in office. Okay, so handling of inflation, disapprove 64, tariff 65, economy 61. Let's go down to. Let's take a look at some of the ports. There's the port of Seattle. You see that?
Yeah, so I'm still on that graphic, and so he is at minus 13% right now from his lowest rating in 2017. Is that right?
Yeah, he's under. Yeah. He's never really. He's kind of been fairly unpopular for all of his presidencies. He's never.
Well, that doesn't surprise me because. You had the left and Democrats, but the dip here is much more suggestive. Like here's the mean, right? Like this has been pretty much the mean, right around here, right? That's been kind of the mean with him, but then he crosses this line, and this is not just Democrats,
right?
Right,
yeah, part of his base.
Yeah, it's part of his base. So I think that's the thing that is really worth paying attention to. Okay, so where do you want to go next?
Okay, so let's start out with this zero hedge story on April 28th. And so one of the narratives is that this loss of goods coming in from Asia will be replaced by reindustrialization and gearing up manufacturing in the United States, blah, blah, blah. The problem is that the latest manufacturing indexes, I put the Dallas one up there, are some of the worst readings ever. And the Philadelphia Fed manufacturing came in even worse. I have a chart further on down. We'll kind of go through this fairly quickly. So the reindustrialization is just not going as planned.
So that's what you referred to, right there.
Right. And then right below that in the financial juice, we have HSBC, low single-digit revenue impact from the downside tariff scenario, more data points not working out as hoped. So yesterday, and then Trump is making a lot of false claims. He's not being very honest. He's doing a bunch of diversions, and he's saying, oh, yeah, we're just raising billions of dollars from tariffs. Well, that's not the case. They're just barely seeing any kind of revenue impact of it all. And it's intuitive because nothing's coming into the country. There's no tariffs to collect. There's just no ships.
Right.
So how can you be collecting tariffs in any significant way? So that kind of sets the stage. Next, we have just kind of a little sidebar. Nearly half of young Americans support Hamas, poll reveals. The number of 18 to 24-year-olds supporting, they say, the terrorist group, that's the term they use, against Israel has jumped over last year. And I put Q, big brain Trump, Cheka will have its hands full now.
Let's see here. This is what you're talking about right here.
Yeah, just moving down the page. April.
Yeah, I got it.
Right below the HSBC one.
Yeah, let's put that up here.
I'm going to make this a little easier on you instead of just jumping around.
Appreciate that.
Okay, we got Trump during an Atlantic interview. I run the.
Hold on, there we go. There's let's. I want to stop here just for a second because this is, I think, a really interesting talking point. Here in Texas, we have Greg you should fucking move to Israel, Abbott, as our governor. And one of the things that he has done is he has outlawed any kind of protest against Israel on any college campus. Like if you are protesting against Israel, UT, Baylor, any of these schools, they will come down there and they will remove you. Okay. So he's done that.
I've been referring that as the Cheka.
And so check this out. He's getting into a beef with the city of San Marcos, which has a college there, which is Texas State University, San Marcos, not far from where I live. And the San Marcos City Council is voting on, now this is weird. And I'm just now like finding out about this. There are cities in America that send Israel money, Russ. Did you know this?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, it's Zog. They've just got the political apparatus is really in bad shape in the United States. And there's obviously a conflict coming because there are people that are, there's a lot of divide on this stuff. And you can't just call people that are opposed to genocide terrorists. I'm sorry. That just doesn't work.
That's right. That's right.
And repeating their narrative over and over again, just thinking that people are still brainwashed. And they're not. You know, people can see with their own eyes. Some people are brainwashed, but the other way, I think.
So Abbott, I did a whole show on this. Abbott sent out a press release scolding the city of San Marcos because they were going to vote on reallocating the $4 million that gets sent to Israel from the taxpayers' money. And Abbott claims that this is like BDS, right? And he won't allow BDS. Any company that does over $100,000 a year in business and decides to either boycott, divest, or strike against Israel can't enter into any contract with the state of Texas. And that would include San Marcos. And so basically what he said, if you go down this path and you vote to not send that money or whatever that money equates to, whether it's supplies or materials, whatever, he said, I will look at all of your grant funding and I will suspend any grants going to the city of San Marcos. You know, this is going to get really interesting in this country where if you have state like Newsom in California, he can get away with this, right? He can get away with his version of totalitarian tyranny. Abbott is going to have some issues here in Texas, even though a lot of Texans are brainwashed with the whole Israel thing. But
there's another poll that's actually worded a little differently. It just says a negative or a positive view of Israel.
Hold on 1 second. I got to finish this.
Okay.
Abbott just recently, as today, just made a proclamation, executive order, that the United States Army is going to have more of a presence in the state of Texas now. Really? What's that all about?
Cheka.
You know, it's like what he's doing is he's seeing that people are not down with the program. So he's beefing up the reserves so that if the natives get out of hand, he's got Trump's guys, right? Those are Trump's guys to basically, you know, do what they need to do. Meanwhile, and all these people who support Israel, I got into a big like back and forth with this woman from Texas who was talking about how, you know, Israel does so many great things for us and Israel is really the one with their intelligence systems that make sure that we don't have any terrorist attacks. Okay. right? Well, why did Greg Abbott allow 500,000 Muslims into the state of Texas, which, by the way, they're planning on creating their own city here called Epic City, which will be run with Sharia law. So on the one hand, Greg, who's been to Israel multiple times, will not tolerate any criticism of Israel. But on the other hand, he's let 500,000 Muslims into the state, is now allowing them to build their own city. Russ, make it make sense.
Well, the narrative is changing. That's the bottom line. So a year or two ago, say 2 years ago, you could get away with these kind of policies, but it's just shifting the other way. There's another poll that it didn't ask the more. This is a more radical question. Do you support a Hamas? That's pretty radical.
Let me see if I can find it here.
The other poll that I don't have up here asked the public, do they have a negative or positive view of Israel? And 51% said negative. That's a majority. So it's just kind of split down the middle. There's just people that don't like Israel, present company included. So there you go.
So one of the things that people have been talking about is this concept of black fatigue, right? People are just like fatigued with, whatever kind of social program or whatever kind of psyop or whatever kind of victimization sort of, again, program that's being run, and they're openly calling it black fatigue. Like people have had enough, right? The same. I think people are also entering into Israel fatigue. Like it's getting close, and then when you put it all together, people are just fatigued by these outside sources or these outside influences that just keep kind of hammering down on us on a daily basis. And that's when you get to a point where people don't have anything to lose. And that's when they start to say, fuck this. We're tired of this shit. And I think that's what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, and they're tired of having this Abbott situation you're describing where they're just constantly pressing on people for their views and their political views and calling them terrorists and trying to create this image of the Muslim world as if though they're all terrorists. That's propaganda. That's and in fact, that's Hollywood.
Yeah. All right, where am I going next?
All right, real quick, we had the Iberian Peninsula suffered a massive blackout during the week, and that was mostly about they'd gone 100% renewables on April the 16th, and then they get a little heat surge because it got a little warmer here in Europe. Not that hot though, and they had a blackout because they don't have any fossil fuel backup. Amazing.
And that's on your website. Should we go there?
No, it's okay. I think well, we could go there, just got to see the effect.
Yeah, why don't we go there? Let's do that. And that was just there. Hold on.
You could clip on a few of the little videos showing the train stopped and people standing by the side of on the rails.
So this blackout is related to the fact that they went full renewable.
Right.
Okay.
And, they have a hot day. The winds kind of cool down. There are not that many winds. It's hot, hot and still air. Boom.
Spain's grid ran entirely on renewable energy for the first time on April 16th with wind, solar, and hydro, meeting all peninsular electricity demand during a weekday. 5 days later, solar set a new record. Yay, solar. Appears that Europeans have been seconds away from a continent-wide blackout. There we go. There's Michael.
Yeah, the whole continent went down because they were trying to rescue Spain and Portugal. I think what they did is they just basically just shut them down, didn't even try to rescue them, and kept the rest of Europe going. And we haven't even really got into the heat of the summer yet.
Right. So how long did that last, Russ? How long did the
almost all day? You can see down there below, there's people queuing in ATMs. If you scroll down the page, there's further on down. There they are getting out of trains. The trains don't, I mean, it's amazing what doesn't function. Everything's electric.
Okay. So
what's up with the barbed wire? Looks like they're in a prison camp.
They're not using fuel, standard fossil fuels for these trains anymore.
Dude, this fencing is concerning. Don't you think? It's like if they had some other kind of train, taking people somewhere.
Yeah.
And somehow they get off the train. It's like, well, you're not going off the tracks, buddy. You're gonna be right here where we can find you.
Kind of a camp.
Yeah, exactly.
Meanwhile, in Portugal, there people are queuing in the lines.
Well, hold on, where we go? Here we go. Right here. So this is Portugal. This is at the ATM. This is everybody's nightmare right here. This is everybody's nightmare. Yeah, that's everybody's nightmare.
Because your cards don't work. If you don't have plenty of cash on hand, you're screwed in these situations. So it's probably a good idea to have some extra cash around.
Well, I agree.
And then remember this. We covered this one right below there. The one right below there, we covered this on one of our shows. The guy coming to the door, remember? Remember we covered this?
So sorry to bother you. You must be Amanda.
Why did you come here?
In my line of work, you have to understand the patterns that govern the world. That can help you see the future. And I knew something was coming.
There's scenes in Spain.
I don't understand. What do you mean?
We've all been deserted.
It's Spain again.
So the traffic lights aren't working. That's mayhem.
Yeah, it's basic stuff. Like, the trains, they run out of electricity, not fuel. They're just completely stopped. Now, I got another chart I'll show you later when we go through the Apollo report, what's called the Apollo report. That's good on that one.
Van der Leyen.
Yeah, that's it on this one.
Okay.
So let's go to the okay. Let's go over the effect of the tariffs. This is called the Apollo Academy, or the Apollo Academy. It's the Apollo, the hedge fund or the investment house that manages $700 billion. Put out some charts. So let's go over that. Click on that and let's.
It's not there anymore. We got a 404, Russ.
Oh, I know where it is. Hang on. Damn it. Should have.
Right there.
I think I've got a good link.
Okay. Why don't you send it to me in the messages?
Yeah, keep on going. We can come back.
Okay. All right. Where do you want to go next? I'm getting the banner. I'm getting the message here. Let's see what we got here. Private chat. Did you send it to me in private chat or
not yet. I got to go find it.
Okay. We're waiting for Russ to find the alternate.
Yeah, just keep on going. Oh, here it is.
All right, we got it.
Let me click on here. Ah, damn it.
Come on, Russ, you can do it. Don't let us down.
All right, here we go. Here it comes. Here it comes.
Don't be that old boomer who can't tech.
I'm trying to do a cut and paste. I'm not very good at that anymore. Okay, going into DM, switching back to you on DM.
On X.
Yep, here comes the link. There it is. Okay.
All right. There you go. Nice job.
So if we'll just go through the charts. I think they're very revealing. It will give everybody a real idea of what's coming.
Grace under pressure with Mr. Winter. All right.
So you're able to get the okay. So we have what's called the voluntary trade reset recession. There's a calendar. Starts April 2nd, Liberation Day tariffs. Container departures from China to the United States slowing rapidly. 20 to 40 days for container transit time. Early May, mid-May. And I would say right now, there's photographs that I've extracted, a number of them from different ports around the country, including the East Coast. See, people just think it's going to be the West Coast. No, it's going to be East Coast too, because there's big tariffs on Europe and all kinds of countries around the world. Right now, the ports are pretty much empty. The containers get picked up, and it takes about 1 to 10 days for the truck and rail transit times to the cities. So by mid-May to late May, the trucking demand comes to a halt. And it kind of looks like even sooner than that. I would say by mid-May, because the problem is let's say you have a haul from the East Coast to the West Coast. Well, you don't have anything to bring back. So they're just totally unprofitable routes for the truckers.
Yeah.
There's no incentive for them because they may have a load to carry in one direction, but not on return. So then empty shelves and companies respond to lower sales. That's late May, early June. Layoffs in the trucking retail industry. Summer 2025 recession. I'd say depression. So meanwhile, you have the sharpest decline in earnings outlook since 2020. That's the chart right below that. We'll just thumb through the charts. See it?
Yeah, it's right there, right in front of us. Yep.
Yeah, look at the plunge. So you have Bessett is making claims. I mean, this is what liars these Trump administration people are. They're really disingenuous. And so
look, I'm not going to, carry water for Trump, but when have we not had politicians that weren't liars? Right? They're all freaking disingenuous.
Yeah, one way or the other. But, in this situation, it's verifiable data. And the guy just says, well, I'm talking with CEOs, and we're really not having that much difficulty. They're just acting like everything's hunky-dory. So that's the narrative being spun. And clearly with the downgrades, and you'll see more when I come. So new orders are collapsing. There's a little bit of lag on that. So it doesn't necessarily happen all in 1 month. It's just sort of a trend that gets going. You got sharp reversal in corporate CapEx spending plans. That's rolled over and headed lower. Now, it's not at the COVID levels yet, but some of this data is sort of lagged. So April's data is not going to be looking very good. And it's going to show that the idea that manufacturing is being created in the U.S. is false. It's just not happening. I mean, how can you even do a feasibility study on a factory? Let's say you want to make $1 billion.
Well, we know. Listen, we know that there is going to be a lag time between what Trump has initiated here and the response time in reindustrializing certain sectors. Honda just made a statement that they're moving some of their production to the U.S. So
there's a lag time, but there's also a planning phase. You got to do feasibility studies. You got to get your financing lined up. Meanwhile,
I'm not, again, if there's a company that can handle something like that, it's going to be Honda, because they've got their financing lined up. They don't have to worry about it.
It kind of favors these large international companies.
Absolutely. And Honda's probably got, pre-existing relationships with certain states And so they know who to work with, who to talk to. And a lot of this stuff can get fast-tracked because, frankly, some of these states are looking to have more jobs and more employment. And, even if there may be a couple of environmental claims, which has been kind of at the center of some of this stuff, beyond just globalist expansion and greed, right? They'll probably overlook some of that and go, okay, let's go. Can you get this thing built in a year? And the Japanese are incredibly efficient. They'll say, we got to build 9 months.
Yeah.
So,
and fast starters are going to have a big edge on everybody else, especially small and medium-sized businesses, which are going to get wiped out.
This is a pretty significant point you bring up, because I have never felt that Trump was on the side of Main Street. I've always felt Trump was a big, beautiful box corporation guy. Like, that's his thing. Trump is always bigger, better, right? He would rather eat at McDonald's than a mom and pop hamburger shop, right?
It's like we need more of that, really.
But I want to look at this chart here, because there's something very interesting about this chart.
Which one?
This one, the Apollo chart that's on the screen right now.
Okay.
It's here. It's 2022, right to 2024. Russ, we're in trouble. Like, we're already in trouble. I mean,
yeah, we're already kind of, which never really came out of COVID levels. Is that what you're saying?
We're already in trouble here.
Yeah, because we never really recovered from COVID levels in terms of CapEx and investment.
Yeah, I don't know what they did to steroid the economy here in 2020 when Biden came in. I don't know what the hell they did, right? But that drops off in 2020. And by the way, do you know what is happening here in 2022? The Ukraine war. That's when the Ukraine war kicks off, 2022, and boom, this thing just begins to start troughing. So we were already headed in this direction.
Right. That's true. That's true. And I'm not saying that Trump. I call Trump the finisher. This has all been preset by other administrations like Biden. Clearly, I mean, this is already in the works.
Yeah.
But Trump is making a lot of policy mistakes. I don't think that they're very proficient. I don't think that they're very good.
Here's the cap index. Can you explain this to people?
Well, it looks kind of the same as the last chart, and it's really, it's kind of dipping down. So that just tells you that nobody's spending the money. They're not really planning on building factories. They're just sitting on their thumbs. Well, all these supplies, I mean, they're going to be shortage of parts, shortage of. I mean, there's one survey is done that said that half the small and medium toy companies in the United States are going to be bankrupt.
Did you hear what Trump said about that?
Yeah, something that said, well, kids can have fewer toys. That's kind of.
Well, so there's a part of me that kind of agrees with him on that.
Yeah, spoiled kids.
But on the other hand, the uber rich will always be able to afford as many toys as they want for their kids. Right. So, I mean, there's the other side of that equation. But part of me doesn't disagree with Trump about that. We've had a lot of material excess in this country, and a lot of it's kind of cheap. Cheap goods don't last long. But you get that kind of dopamine hit when you get something new.
Yeah, he's talking about maybe changing the culture some. I get that, but it's still sort of a nasty thing to say. People are going to be impressed with that. That's going to help.
You're going to have 2 dolls, and you're going to like it, kid.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll be the best, beautiful, most awesome dolls, but you'll only have 2. All right, so inventories before the tariffs took effect.
Well, that's the inventory buildup. So they did build up the inventories, but that'll be worked off. So that probably gives you a little bit of lead time into June and July before the inventories are worked off. So they tried to rush a bunch of goods in, but now there's just a big, nothing happening. No follow on to this.
I was a good consumer this past month. I bought a new TV in anticipation, perhaps.
Yeah, smart. It might be smart. Smart.
Yeah. So now I get to watch my Warriors for probably maybe one more game or two, and then it's back to YouTube with the TV.
So this next, I think the key thing is not just the new orders falling, but the CapEx plans are falling because they're really counting on the CapEx and the pickup and tariff revenues, and that's not happening. That's clearly a failure in the policy.
Now, who is the Apollo Academy?
It's research put out by the Apollo, the investment firm. They're kind of the mini-me of BlackRock. They're big, $700 billion worth of assets that they manage.
So, can you summarize this, or
no? Just keep going. Let's just go with the charts.
Okay, so that's it. We're done with the charts.
No. There's more.
Where?
Just keep scrolling down.
I'm at the bottom.
Oh, where do they all go? Oh, see, it says download high resolution chart book.
Yeah.
There's more.
All right, there we go. So these are quotes. I don't care if you call it a recession or not. In this industry, that's a recession. This is a quote from the past week. Robert Jordan, CEO of Southwest Airlines. Chipotle saving money because of concerns around the economy was the overwhelming reason consumers were reducing the frequency of restaurant visits. CEO Scott Boatwright. PepsiCo, relative to where we were 3 months ago, we probably aren't feeling as good about the consumer now. Jamie Caulfield, Chief Financial Officer of PepsiCo.
And the big wave, the tsunami wave, hasn't even really hit yet. So can you get that high resolution chart book up?
Yeah, I think we're there. Hold on.
Screen.
Oh, it's my bad. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so let's scroll down to where we were. We started there. Let's get down to page 2 because I want to go over consumer sentiment. This is really something else. This is where it really shows up. Okay, prices paid rising, inflation, which is what happens when you don't have essential goods. And I'm just talking about toys here. I'm talking about parts and things that people need.
Sure.
New order contracting will decline further in April. Okay, let's skip over that one. Keep going. Inventory, we covered that. Inventories rising before the tariff took place. So that's lagging. Keep going.
Boy, look at this. Look at that trough.
That's COVID. Yeah, COVID was devastating.
Terrible. Brutal.
Keep going. We know that inventories are high for now. Okay, but here's truck sales down significantly in March because who needs a heavy truck when you don't have any business? So that's headed south in March. April is going to be a disaster. Okay, this is big. CEO confidence declining. Their confidence in the economy a year from now, big plunge. In fact, you have to go all the way back to the 2009 period to find some equivalent lows. The recovery from the 08-09 recession.
The glory days of Trump, right here.
Yeah, the first term.
Yeah.
This is, logistics index has been pretty high. They've had confidence. That doesn't look too problematic yet, but it's rolled over and it's lagging because that's basically February and March data. Okay, there's the U.S. to China-U.S. trade coming to a stop. That's data through April. Through Liberation Day is April the 2nd. So the next chart over will be April to May, and then you'll just see probably almost down to zero. There's the container shipping tonnage falling off a cliff. The ports are empty right now. This weekend, as we speak, they're empty. Nothing being picked up, nothing being hauled out of there. Okay, keep going. All right, here's the consumers. Consumer sentiment declining across all income groups. Okay, normally when you have this sort of drop in consumer sentiment, like at different times, like 08, 09, there's a big drop. This chart goes all the way back to 1990. Look where it is. Even among high income people.
Yeah.
Everybody. Yeah. It's like a universal. You got to go the consumer is really in shock.
Well,
housing prices aren't going up. There's 42% of refis from houses are being declined. That's a record.
Well, in a weird way, Trump is uniting Americans.
Yeah, we'll all be poor. Exactly. Rich or poor, you're going to be. Consumers worried about losing their jobs. That goes all the way back to 1990 or 1980. That's 40 years of charts there to see those kind of readings.
1982 is brutal. Look at that.
This isn't just a little 10-year chart. It's like 45 years, half a century, and it's.
What the hell happened? What the hell happens in 1982? Like, here's Reagan, right?
Well, that was a bad recession.
82.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that. And then, of course, it dips again in 88, where there's another recession. And then 90, holy smokes. Look at that right there.
That was a recession, but we kind of recovered from it quickly. But the financial crisis had kind of hit up these levels.
Yeah.
So the consumers are very worried. And like I say, wait till they go to Walmart and find out the shelves are empty.
God, look at this. This is March 09, which is roughly like 6 months before the housing collapse, right?
Oh, that's during the housing collapse. Yeah, that started in 08.
No, wait, right. Okay, that is during the housing.
Then the recession really hit. So the gray bar is recession.
Okay, that's it. All right.
Record high consumers think business conditions are worsening. Just off the friggin' chart. Oh, my goodness. Going back half a century. So the consumer's kind of prescient about something. They're probably hearing talk in their jobs or, the scuttlebutt, even like government employees, because they're kind of on so it's sort of the normal props of the economy, like government jobs are kind of ebbing away because of Doge and Trump cuts. He's trying to get rid of whole departments. I mean, he's trying to do a lot, just a shock treatment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a very relevant description for the current regime of shock treatment. Yeah. So consumer confidence again.
All right. Okay. I don't know if people know this, but tourism is 9% of the GDP of the United States. And you don't have tourists coming in because they're pissed at the United States or they think conditions here are bad or that the United States is hostile towards them. They don't come. And so look at the drop-offs from Europe. 20, 30, that's in March. Okay, well, let's see what April looks like. It's going to be even worse.
Well, too bad they don't have Israel on here because they would be headed in the other direction.
So that's a third of tourism, foreign tourists in general declining. Oddly, South Americans, there's actually an increase. I don't know what that's an outlier. I don't know what that's about.
They're probably they're tourists. Interesting. Very interesting.
But yeah, Mexico, Canada down, credit card balances, everybody's leveraged up. So just the highest percentage going back to the last crisis of credit card accounts only making minimum payments. And I'll give you another factoid that's not on this chart. Starting this week, they're going to be going after 9 million student loan delinquents and defaults.
Really?
They're giving them power to basically garnish their wages, seize their assets. Yeah, they're going to go after 9 million people that are delinquent or defaulted on their student loans. What great timing that is.
The student loan thing is one of those topics that if I spend any considerable amount of time thinking about it, I just get pissed.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's very scammy.
Because the government was the one that started this. They got in the business of being the lender, which, before you would have, these individual either banks or institutions where you could apply for a student loan, and the government just got right in the middle of that and said, this is going to be our business. And
yeah, it propped up the economy falsely. It's been a false prop to the economy because a lot of people have used it to live on.
Right. And it's been
even older people have taken out student loans just to live on, to go on trips or buy cell phones, Apple computers.
But the other thing too is that if you had private institutions competing for student loans, you would have the ability to manage the percentage on the student loans, and you would also have greater oversight,
right? Yeah,
on who you were loaning to.
Absolutely, yeah. You'd have a better performance,
and so you get them out of the way, and the government's like, "Hey, we'll take anybody, and we don't have to compete on a percentage rate." So we can set the percentage rate for whatever we want because we're the only game in town here.
Yeah, you can't. Of course, you can't blame Trump for the excesses of student lending, but they're doing shock treatment there too. That's not going to be pretty. You're going to take 9 million people really out of the economy, would have no access to credit, no access to borrowing. They're tapped out on their credit cards. They're paying the minimum, and then they come out and start garnishing their wages.
Well, so the responsible thing to do would be to come to these people and say, "Look, you're delinquent, or you haven't paid. We're gonna work with you, and we're gonna set up a payment program." And we're going to enter into a conscious agreement with this. And if you're not going to do it, then there's going to be a price to pay for this.
Well, see, they've already done that with these 9 million people. They've already had that.
Well, then it's
COVID period gave them a pass. They gave them a pass during the COVID period.
So there's a friend of mine who shall remain nameless, and she had the means to send her son to college. And her son went to a very expensive private college to learn about audio engineering, sound technology, student loan, right? And she just told him, don't repay it. Don't repay the student loan. And I'm like, well, why did you do that?
Because that message was being sent out for a long time to people.
And by the way, this kid is not sitting on his mother's couch playing video games. Like this, he's not a kid anymore. He's a grown man. But he's been involved with some very high profile people doing some very high profile technological work.
Well, then good. Maybe he has the means of repaying it. So
maybe. Well, I mean, his mother, though, she's somebody who's kind of like a 60s radical. And then here's what's really funny. So we got into this debate about like social programs and free education and free medicine, right? Because she's all for that. Like everybody should be able to have free college education. And I'm like, really? Do you think that the government will do anything that's going to be free? If you're going to get a college education, here's how it's going to work. You're going to take a test, right? You're going to take a test. You're going to take a series of tests. And whatever you score the highest in, that's what the government will pay for. You're not going to go to school.
Yeah, merit-based, totally merit-based.
Yeah, you're not going to go to school to be an architect where if you test out and the government says, you know, you would really be a much better water waste reclamation engineer. And that's where the money's going to go. It's just like socialized medicine, right? If you don't agree with the government's prognosis and prescription, you're not getting anything.
Well, one of the consequences of all these student loans, it's over $1 trillion, by the way, it's outstanding.
Yeah.
Is that it's driven up tuition costs.
That's the other side of it too, right?
I went to school at University of Washington back in the 70s, early 70s. I look back at that. That was practically free. So once again, the baby boomers get the benefit of practically a free education. And, you know, education back then wasn't too bad, really. It was pretty good education. I learned some things. And now you have poor educations and sky-high tuitions, and it's been driven by credit. Credit creation has caused that. So it's a bubble. And look who's benefited. Look at all the people that work for the universities and the professors, and you know that's a racket too.
You know, you bring up a great point because I remember when I went to college, California had a pretty good deal. If you grew up in California, you got pretty good education for a very fair price.
Right.
So you know, I got a college degree. I put myself through school. The reason I was able to do that because I lived at home with my parents, but I paid for my tuition. I paid for my books. And it wasn't outrageous. And the quality of education that I got at the state university level was fantastic. The English department at my school was equal to almost any English department in the country. You know, Anne Rice, who wrote Diary of a Vampire, right? She taught there. Frances Mays, Under the Tuscan Sun, she taught. We had great teachers there. But here's what I noticed is somewhere in the 90s, all of these other colleges and schools and universities started popping up, like the University of Phoenix, which isn't really even in Phoenix, right? It's kind of online, you know, kind of physical.
And they milk the student loan market big time.
That's right. You have all these, we'll call them like mech colleges. Like that's really what they are. They're like mech colleges. And they're the ones that really get the student loan fat off the bone, don't you think?
Yep. But, my son started at the University of Washington in 2001, and the tuitions weren't too bad. I mean, they weren't bad yet. But over the next couple of years, they started to creep up. And then I think after he actually graduated, so he kind of beat the cut, and plus he got some scholarships, it just took off. So that's when the student loan thing really got going, 2005, 2010, under Obama.
Yeah,
that period in there, they just crammed a lot of money into people's hands, drove tuitions up.
And the other thing too about the student loan process and going to college, I've had this conversation with a listener of the show who's very involved, kind of in the college world, and he's a lawyer, alumni of Stanford, and we both agree that unless you're going to school to be a doctor or a lawyer, it's almost not worth your time or money.
Right.
Because if you, or maybe some kind of really specialized kind of tech gig, because if you get this student loan, you have to start paying when you exit college, and it's those high level jobs that are going to be, in the medical field, you're a physician, or in the law field. Those will be the jobs that will allow you to start, chipping away at the student loan.
Even those educations are too expensive. They need to be.
Well, I agree with you, but where are you going to get? Like theoretically, you just can't get that training on the street.
Well, here in the Czech Republic, I think the doctors that I use, I'm a member of what's called Canadian Medical.
Yeah.
And I have access to doctors in different areas. I think they're pretty good doctors. They don't really pay them that much. I think they have prestige. They're all kind of cocky. They're really cocky, especially the men. They're kind of cocky guys. When I see them, I keep thinking to myself, how much do you get paid by American standards? I bet you it's not much. I bet you're not making that much money. But they seem competent. I think they get good medical training. I think they kind of pay for part of their medical training, but I think they keep their wages in check. And so they're really able to deliver, I think it's pretty good medicine.
I'm pretty sure that the guy who wrote the book, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, was Czech. Did you ever see that movie, The Unbearable Lightness of Being?
No, I've heard about it. I probably should watch it.
It's an okay movie. Daniel Day-Lewis plays the doctor.
Yeah, great actor.
And one of the famous lines in the movie is when he says, "Please take your clothes off." It's like, because it's a movie about sex, right? But he's also a doctor, and I'm thinking, maybe they've all seen that movie, right? Maybe that's why they're cocky, because
right.
Let's
keep going on the charts. We got Las Vegas tourism declining. That's dated information. It's starting to roll over. I don't think that's a representative chart yet. Maybe Apollo will be out later with a new chart. I'm going to keep tracking this. So Vegas is sort of not really there quite yet.
Are there any seasons, like Vegas is always huge during the Super Bowl. So this would be right here.
Yeah, but nothing like COVID. Look at what happened in COVID. Nothing was going on in Vegas. They completely shut it down.
Well, even after the housing crisis, Vegas was bad. It was really bad.
Yeah, it'll probably get bad. So we got dated information here. Let's keep going. Same thing. Keep going. Let's just go through these charts. Same store retail store sales really hasn't started to decline yet, but we got kind of lagged data. So the consumer is in shock. Consumers right now is just totally shitting their pants. And you would think that it would start following through on some of this data like Vegas and retail sales. And then the foreigners are coming in.
Hey, listen. I was in Costco last couple of weeks, full as ever.
People might be stocking up.
Possible. Costco was full as ever. That place is rarely a ghost town.
So not really showing up in hotel demand yet, but that's kind of lagging. You can see January. That's just lagged data. I don't even know where they put it up.
Does this include Airbnb or is this just straight hotel?
Hotels, I think.
This is the big one. This is the big one.
That's a biggie, right?
Yeah. This is really problematic. Really, really problematic. So this is cash purchases of home, not loans. Cash purchases.
Cash purchase of loan. I think that's because basically the baby boomers that have all the cash are dying off. And plus they've already bought homes with cash or second homes with cash.
Is there another graph about homes in general?
Probably.
Okay, what do we got here?
S&P revenue from China is roughly 6 times U.S. exports to China. So the S&P makes a lot of money in China. much more than U.S. exports to China. So the effect is not on U.S. exports to the rest of the world. That's going to get hit too. It's just going to be the drying up of goods and visitors. And
so let me ask you a question. Where does Apple stand in all of this? Because I know they're manufacturing in China, and they're trying to
move their manufacturing to India.
Right. So, but does Apple count as an American product, or does it count as a Chinese manufactured product? Where are they in the statistical equation?
I just think they're a big global concern.
But I mean, they're big, but it's got to land somewhere on some side of that ledger sheet. Is it U.S. or is it China?
Well, they make a lot of their stuff overseas in Asia.
That's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, they make it there, so they're going to be having to scramble around. And I think there's a lot of corruption involved, because I think the Trump administration is very corrupt, and they're going to make little side deals for people. Hey, if you go over to India, we want to favor India over China and do that kind of shit.
Side deals, again, I'm just going to play devil's advocate on this. Every fucking administration has their side deals. Like Trump, this is just another version of it. Like when Obama was president, he was doing all these side deals with banks, right? And he basically was saying, look, he was putting pressure on banks. In fact, one of them was Washington Mutual. And basically it was like, hey, you need to start lending to minorities who are not qualified, right? And so it's like, if you don't do that, we're going to make your life hard on you. And if you do that, we're going to give you perks. We're going to make sure you're like a most favored nation client, right? So they all, and again, I'm not carrying water for Trump. They all do their fucking side deals, right? So what do you got here?
Well, that's the conclusion. Trade wars, stagflation shock. I think that might be the last chart, or is there another one?
I think there might be one more. No, that's the end.
Okay, that's it on that rundown.
Now, that's a guy that looks like you can trust. He's a complete egghead nerd, but I wouldn't leave my kids with him.
So what I saw there was the consumer, the actual consumer in the field, the data is kind of lagged, but appears to be rolling over.
Right.
But consumer sentiment is awful. So they're kind of continuing on as rote, or there might be some hoarding and some stocking up going on. If it's more intelligent people, hard to say, but it's just going to hit the wall in terms of being able to get goods, move goods around. Nothing's going to be moving around the country. The truckers are going to be out of work. That's a big segment. The tourism industry is a big segment, and the 9 million student loan people, possibly even more, are going to be under pressure. Government workers are going to continue to be laid off. It's just like a perfect storm.
Well, look, you and I have had this conversation before. I think it's part of a controlled demolition.
Yeah, I do too.
And it is not just domestic. This is a global controlled demolition, because it will have an impact everywhere. And you and I talked a little bit about this before the show, and I think that this is something that we have to just put on the table and talk about. That it may look like we might be at war with all of these countries with a trade war, but maybe they're all just sitting down at the same table and, playing this thing out. We would play, army and soldiers, or cowboys and Indians as kids, right? Then after we were done shooting each other and falling down the ground, we just go back to, being buddies and trading comic books or whatever. And one of the things that I brought up, which you seem to share a similar view on, is China. And right now, apparently, everything is kind of ground to a halt in China. Like there's very little manufacturing. They're having to lay people off. And what did the Chinese do when they have too many useless eaters? They eliminate them.
They've proven to be very authoritarian, and their COVID regime was awful, much worse than the United States.
There are some people who believe that somewhere between 100 million to 200 million people died as a result of COVID, not by COVID itself, but by being taken out by the Chinese government. And there's a really weird data point about all of these cell phones going dark. Like they're just, there was a number there, and then there's no use of that cell phone anymore. And the numbers are kind of staggering. And I've heard, although I can't really vouch for this, but I've heard that when COVID was happening in China, high COVID, peak COVID, you can see the smoke of bodies burning from space. Like satellite imagery, there were billows of smoke coming out of China. And the people have said who have been to China that it's kind of a ghost town.
Well, the problem with China too is their demographics is all screwed up. They got, they had that birth problems where they would get rid of the girls.
Yeah, they're too many boys.
Too many boys, and so these men are just kind of, they don't have families. They're sort of a miserable lot. I think they're the ones that might be getting targeted.
Well, you don't want a bunch of spoiled young brats, not.
You don't want to take out your your fertile women that could still give birth. They still have a big demographic. They're starting to develop a big demographic issue. It's all kind of screwed up. Too many old people, kind of like Japan. They're headed in that direction. Too many males, too many old people.
There's that saying, never let a good crisis go to waste. And I could easily see China just saying, hey, how's the organ market doing these days?
Yeah.
Right?
Let's get this guy while he's still 45 years old and we can harvest his livers. Exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right.
You don't want to wait too long. You don't want to wait until they get to be my age.
Yeah. Yeah. Your liver.
I don't think they're going to want my organs.
Yeah. So I'm looking at this from a global level, and China's like, great. We get to eliminate a bunch of people. Historically, they're good at it.
Yeah, they'll get rid. The useless eaters are going to be your older men, maybe your older people. They're going to want to preserve their younger women but they got to have younger men around to kind of start reproducing.
I'll tell you who's going to be the big recipient out of all of this. And keep in mind, there's a guy in the White House whose wife is Indian. India is going to be the big player out of all of this.
Yeah, I think so too, because they're ultimate supremacists.
And I've been talking about India for a long time, and I've said that there's going to come a time when the economic and manufacturing power is going to shift from China to India.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me show you one more chart. I wouldn't count China out. Go down the page to American and Chinese power generation. Let's take a close look at that chart and get it large on your screen so everybody can see it. This will blow your mind. You see it?
Hold on. I'm trying to get in here. Hold on. I got the port of Boston.
Yeah, further on down the page below. Yeah, below the Boston and Newark ones. Yeah, below that. Okay. Empty. We don't need to show those ports. They're empty. Here's big brain Trump says tourism is way up. And why lie about something that's easily disprovable data point? I don't get the guy. Is this some kind of a loyalty test for his supporters?
I'll give you my theory on that. So you got big brain Trump, U.S. borrowing requirements, astronomical blowout, American and Chinese power generation. That's what you want. All right.
Okay, so the chart goes back to 1985, and the United States power generation has been kind of flatlined for the last 20 years.
Right.
Very little increase in annual increase in power generation in the United States because they've closed down.
That's because China's been building all these coal plants.
Well, China's going off the map. United States is flat, okay?
China, okay. We have to look at this from like the fucking Kyoto Accord, the Paris Accord. It's like China got
they got to pass, right?
They got to pass. They it's like, yeah, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Build as many coal plants as you want. Meanwhile, the United States, you're going to have the same level of climate control,
right?
As Luxembourg.
No denying the inputs to all this. You're absolutely right. The United States screwed themselves and just gave China a free pass.
So
China just goes climbing up the map because they got nuclear plants, they got renewable, they use coal, they use everything that they can. The United States is just flatline. Okay, now look at the yellow. This is total artificial intelligence demand. By 2030, the end of this decade, the total AI demand will equal all the electricity that the United States produces. Okay, we just saw an example of what happens when you have blackouts in places like Spain because of the way they've constructed their energy output. What's it going to be like in the U.S. again, the lead time is years to build nuclear plants and gas-fired plants and build up your electricity capacity. It just isn't going to happen. Either the AI thing completely collapses for the United States or the whole economy. It doesn't add up. You can't have that kind of AI demand.
Well, okay. So we'll take a couple steps back here. I think if they wanted to, within 2 years, maybe 3 at the most, they can fast track power. They can, if Trump has his way, and it seems like Congress doesn't meet on shit for anything anymore. It's just an executive order presidency at this point. Trump can fast track stuff. He can fast track coal plants. There's things that because that's something that we know how to do. Right, we know how to make these things. Yeah,
it can increase the capacity, but it's not. Again, the lead times are in question. It doesn't just happen just like that.
No, I understand. I understand. Now, I'm going to throw a little, just like Trump. I'm going to throw a little hand grenade into our conversation here. Have you been paying attention to what's going on with Alberta, Canada?
Well, Alberta, Canada is really rich in resources. An amazing place.
Have you been following what's going on there?
Well, I actually invest there. I have a bunch of Canadian.
Alberta wants to secede from Canada, and they're very serious about this.
Really?
They're the most conservative state or province in Canada. They're the ones that have the highest amount of resources.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Yep. If you're an investor out there, take a look at British Columbia and Alberta. The problem is they're kind of choked off from access to like selling their energy because they won't build pipelines. See, there you go.
Well, hold on now. Hold on. There's something going on here with Trump in Canada, particularly Alberta, because this is really weird, but also strange for like Trump psychology. I just got to point this out. Everybody thought that Trump would back this guy, Pierre Poilievre, who theoretically is kind of the conservative, candidate, or was a conservative candidate for PM. No, instead, Trump backs Mark Carney. And it's like Mark Carney is completely everything that Trump isn't. But why do you
Mark
think
Carney's a central banker? That's his background.
Well, why do you think he backs this guy, though? Mark Carney basically wants to get into people's bank accounts so they can pay for fucking net zero. Right? So Mark Carney, I connect with and communicate and often commiserate with Canadians who are not happy. And Mark Carney is the guy that will turn Canada south, literally south. And the first sort of, I don't know, brick, right? The first stone to be thrown is Alberta. And I think that there's some negotiation going on with the United States and Trump and Alberta to bring Alberta into the United States. I think that is an absolutely
Alberta's a prize, definitely. You're absolutely right, and I'm very aware of that because I invest there in a bunch of different companies.
So so you want to talk about making up for energy shortfall? There you go.
Yeah,
right?
Because they could get the pipelines coming into the United States.
That's right. Absolutely.
Just clear the way for that, and then you'd have lots of new sources of energy. Because the U.S. oil fields are kind of peaking.
Yeah.
Permian Basin is not. It just doesn't have that many good years left.
Well, they need to. Oil is abiotic, right? So you pump it, and then you have to let it go fallow for a while so it can start the abiotic process back up again. But I think this is what's happening.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. With gas, natural gas is different. It's more a question of pipelines and accessibility and getting it to the right places.
Yeah.
And if you put a bunch of environmental regulations in front of that, then it never happens. That's what's happened with Canada and kept it from getting its full potential.
Yeah.
And, this is a real problematic. These lines I see here, and then the problems aren't going to develop in 2030. We're going to go well before that, before the parabolic increase in this AI demand is going to create big problems for the load in the United States, similar to what happened in Iberia this week. So I don't like this chart at all, and China doesn't have that problem.
Well, they don't have the problem, again, because they weren't handcuffed. We have the problem because we were handcuffed. And I'm going to kind of get on Trump's side on this. He's trying to undo the handcuffs. And I think this thing with Canada and Alberta is very real. Right? And so if Canada, aside from Alberta, sees this as an imminent threat, then how are they going to respond to that? How are they going to respond to Trump and this idea that he wants to bring Canada in, annex it, start talking about the North American Union, whatever, right? Like, so Canada, like Trump is putting the pressure on Canada, and by backing a World Economic Forum stooge that really nobody in Canada likes.
It just hastens the collapse of Canada.
Canada, yep.
But I would say it hastens it alongside the United States, because the United States is
maybe we'll see how. Again, this is all timeline, speed. There's a lot in play here, but yeah, I think that there's something big happening with Canada, and people should really keep their eyes on Alberta.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's a valid theory. I like that theory. I guess I might have to go through a downturn first, though.
You know what I love, Russ? We a lot of times we have really different POVs, but I think we have great conversations, and we pull things out of each other that are really, I think, helpful and creative.
Well, Alberta is definitely a prize. I don't know. I don't think people really even realize it's just really rich.
Uranium.
And also
uranium.
Yeah, uranium, metals, oil sands, standard conventional oil. A lot of there's some nickel deposits up there.
Right.
I mean, all of Canada is very resource rich. It's a pretty remarkable country. They should be doing much better than they are.
Yeah, the other thing about Canada, which is really the dirty little secret, right, is the Chinese and the Chinese involvement in Canada.
Oh, and the Indians too. My God, they've taken over there.
Absolutely, absolutely. When England ceded Hong Kong to China, I think that was a formal kind of secession, right? But I feel like there were informal secessions, and one of them was Canada. And so the Chinese may not be, on the corporate crown of Canada, but they are like one layer below it. And all you got to do is go to British Columbia, and you just see that influence, heavy duty, right?
Vancouver, especially in the real estate market there. But the problem with the Chinese, they're just kind of speculators. The kind of people that show up in Canada to speculate and flip properties. And okay, right below that, we've got a story that kind of surprised me, and I think there might be a reason for this. But the mass deportations promised by Trump are actually for the same time period are 10% below Biden's mass deportations.
Yeah.
Now, I think it could be – I'm going to give Trump a little slack on this one because I think it's hard to deport people on a mass scale.
Absolutely.
They go underground. They don't show up to work. They're protected in these sanctuary cities. There's organizations.
The sanctuary cities are really big. And also for like the first, maybe a couple months, there were people inside of DHS, ICE, that were tipping people off.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not that easy. I was just reading last year. I was reading Joseph Goebbels' diaries, the diaries of Joseph Goebbels. Fascinating. Maybe we should have a show about it sometime.
That'd be good.
But he wrote over and over again, 1942, 43, 41, 42, 43, 44, all the way through the war. He was the Gottleiter or the mayor of Berlin. And he would write over and over and over, I got to get these Jews out of here. I got to get the Jews out of Berlin. I got to deport them. I got to send them east, over and over and over again. And he would say it every year. And by the time the end of the war came around, there's still a bunch of Jews in Berlin. He couldn't get them out.
Yeah, I think the deportation process.
That's the analogy here. It's not that easy to just pick up people, especially people that get kind of established a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's not like every illegal just came in the country in the last year. Some of them have been around for a long time and get pretty much ingrained into the society.
Yeah. Yeah.
So not that easy. I mean, I'll cut Trump a little slack on that, but it's not meeting the promise yet. All right, here's a story. The EU airlines, Ryanair, says they're going to start buying Chinese planes instead of American planes. So yeah, you got Honda moving to production to the United States, but meanwhile, you have the Europeans are going to start buying Chinese planes.
Why don't they buy? Don't the English make planes?
Good question.
They do. Don't they have Airbus? Isn't that their
company? Yeah, that's France. That's France. Yeah, but they're saying the threat by Europe's largest low-cost carrier and one of Boeing's biggest customers is the latest sign of a potential reordering of the global aerospace industry if Trump does not exempt the sector from his tariff plans. Now, maybe he'll start exempting him, but that's up in the air.
Europe's largest low-cost carrier.
Yeah, Ryanair. They're awful, by the way. Don't ever fly on them if you can help it.
They deserve Chinese planes.
Yeah, they're just like a cattle car.
Yeah. All right.
So I think I kind of flipped through the different charts and shit.
Yeah.
I thought I sent you some other stuff.
Well, let's see. Let me go through there. All right, hold on. Let's see. No, that was the last thing you sent me. There are other things that are above that, like the Epsilon stuff in Newark, the empty ports. You sent me that. Trump is now threatening the world for Israel. You sent me that. Let's see what else.
I thought I sent you some of my around the webs that I've been doing. Let me just check that real quick for interest.
You got the Las Vegas is a ghost town.
Okay, the Israelis I got an article on there on the web. Israelis play stupid games and win stupid prizes as forest burns. So when the Israelis took over occupied Palestine, they would bring in these invasive pine trees and just grow them everywhere, all over Israel. Well, they tend to be kind of fire
flammable,
right? And so it just so happens that all of Israel is burning from these trees now that they planted that don't really belong there.
Yeah, man, that's probably wasn't a good idea.
Well, they did it for political reasons, to kind of cover up the Palestinian towns and villages that they.
So they get a fast growing pine tree in order to do that, and now it's coming back on them because they're incredibly flammable.
Yep, but it's dry, dry country. It's not really conducive. So
I keep coming back to what E. Michael Jones said. He brought it to my attention for the first time, and he learned about it from Ehud Barak, who's one of the guys that was a frequent flyer in the Epstein world, mostly to the Epstein, what would you call it, mansion or townhouse or whatever in New York. But I think Barak had gone to the island as well. And Ehud Barak has been talking about this 80-year curse.
Yeah.
And so he has said that there has never been a Jewish-run state or republic that has lasted longer than 80 years. So he's on the record with that. And we are in year 77. So Israel just had its 77th birthday.
Yeah, they started growing the trees in 1951. They launched after they occupied Palestine, drove the Palestinians out. Then in 51, they started a massive growing program of these trees. That's kind of where it started. And of course, they were small for a long, long time. And they grew bigger and bigger and bigger. Now they're large, flammable trees all over the place.
See, that's the kind of thing that a society, which I think is borderline neurotic, they would look at that and they would sort of see that in the curse model. You know what I mean? And it would be like all of a sudden the curse becomes almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So when these things start to happen inside of Israel, and they got this 80-year curse in the back of their brain, and they're starting to kind of think about it, obsess over it. It almost becomes self-fulfilling. It's almost like the combination of an egregore and a golem, sort of all together in one. And I think this is something to really pay attention to.
Well, somebody put up a meme to that effect, and I put the meme up because I guess I'm a mean guy. And I said, you know you've overstayed your welcome when God gives you a sign. It's time to go back to Europe. It shows these people in smoke walking down the street, the Israelis. And then the final, it says, did somebody remember to buy a map this time, or will we wander and whine?
Yeah, that's kind of getting close to that, right? It's getting close to Judgment Day. It's getting close to Judgment Day.
They're still involved in war. They're still involved in genocide. Their reputation around the world has just gone down the toilet. People all over the world don't like them. Even Americans, which they think they had slam dunk because of different myths. You know, it's about 50-50, which is, I don't know, that's good Civil War material for the United States. How's that for a Civil War?
No, that would.
You don't think people would fight over that kind of stuff?
Fight over Israel?
Yeah.
Oh, I do think they would.
If it got into a war, right? They would.
I mean, I do think it's like, because there are a bunch of people who I have interacted with on Twitter who firmly believe that, you know, Israel's our greatest ally and you know, everything else that goes along with it, and they're rabid, about it. And they're not even Israeli, they're not even Jewish. You know, they're these Christians who are drunk with this kind of end times Israel as God's chosen place and God's chosen people, and you know, we got to have it intact for the second coming. I mean, you just do the math around this whole thing, and so Israel can absolutely do no wrong in their minds. And of course, you throw in this idea that somehow they're protecting us from terrorism, which is what this woman says. It was like I forget the name of it, but it was like this French. Hold on, let me just finish this. It was this French institute that had all these statistics that somehow claimed that thanks to Israeli intelligence, that they had stopped 500,000 terror attempts. Okay. This is what she was claiming. So I went to that French institute.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I did. Like, let me look at this thing. So, no, it's real. It was created by the French government, but one of the major benefactors and people involved in that website and institute was something like, you know, the Eternal Shoah Foundation or something like that. Like, oh, really? This is who is feeding in all of this data. How do you think? Is there any way that you could even remotely think that it's neutral or independent? No, you can't.
Just a propaganda arm.
It's propaganda. And so just because this one fucking website in France comes up with these figures, and those figures are likely generated by one of their major partners who's invested in propping up a narrative.
And you know they pumped that through the big mega churches in the United States and propagandized this lady and others.
So well, of course you do. Of course. So you get it. You get the religious side, and then you get the political side. But then the political side is filled with cognitive dissonance because, again, if there's such a threat, then why the fuck did Greg Abbott let 500,000 of them into this state? Where mosques are proliferating, like they're proliferating like Chick-fil-A's now, these mosques. And so
I think most Muslims that come to the United States are pretty pro-American. I'd like to say that
I'm not debating that.
The Iranian family that I know, which is my son's wife,
I am not
very pro-American. Very pro-American. Sometimes I kind of tell them, in discussions over Christmas with them, I said, you better be careful what you wish for, because they want the government to go in Iran, and they want the Shah's son to come in and all this kind of stuff. I said, wow, you better be careful with what you're dealing with, because you're dealing with Israelis, and they're not nice people. And they kind of agreed with that. But they don't really care. So it's the same kind of mentality.
Well, I agree with you. I remember one time I got a Uber ride with this guy he's from Iraq. He was from Iraq, and he was so fucking happy to be an American. He's talking to me. Oh, I love this place. You know, he's talking about and he wasn't bullshitting. You know, I'm like, yeah, good. Like, so I'm not debating that, but right, like, is he are all 500,000 of these people being vetted? So I'm just saying, right? Like you can advocate for this all you want, but the fact of the matter is that the governor of the state that you're standing behind, because he's going after the city of San Marcos, has let 500,000.
Some of them are not very good fits, and like the Somalis, and those are they kind of vary across the Middle East. There's different kinds of Arabs and Iranians and Muslims. They vary a lot.
Sure.
And you can cherry pick some of the better ones, like you can of any country, and they're smart. The Iranians are very smart people.
Sure, they are. Yeah, I mean, and then you get the various sects of Islam. You know, you have the Salafist Wahhabists, and they're extreme. They're extremists, right? I'll never forget. I was at HEB one night, 10:30 maybe. Nobody's there. It's in Oak Hill, and in front of me is this sort of scrawny Middle Eastern guy and his wife. And his wife was much larger. My sense was that she might have been like a black Muslim. That was my sense. But she's all dressed in black, and she's got like, you know, the sort of the black, you know, heavy duty burqa thing going on. And I'm like, whoa, you know, and like, that's really the only time that they could come out and shop. It was like at 10:30 at night, because they didn't really want to be seen during the day.
Wow.
and that was like 2015, that's 10 years ago.
The time of day didn't stop my my son's mother-in-law and wife. They love to shop anytime.
Well, did they dress like that though?
No, of course not.
No, they were undercover, literally going undercover. So yeah, I think to your point, what you brought up, this idea of like a civil war being almost like a religious or I don't know what you would call culture war. I think that could happen. And that's why they're cracking down on all the anti-Semitism.
That'd be a shame for there to be a civil war over friggin' Israel. That would really be a shame if that happened.
Well, yeah, because Israel would probably be the winner out of that.
Right. Yeah, the Cheka. Wouldn't it be the Cheka?
But that's
and Trump's preparing a Cheka.
Well, you bring up a really good point, because he just passed an executive order that is getting us closer to a federalized police state.
That would be awful.
That just happened within the last 48 hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
That would really be politicized. You know, and he's complained so much about the Democrats being politicized, and he's going to go the same direction or more.
Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can find it here. Hold on.
Bolsheviks.
Have you been following this thing with James O'Keefe?
No.
You know who he is, right?
Yeah.
So he basically has gotten some kind of major dirt that he's gone undercover. He's gone kind of dark, and he said, "I am not depressed, and I do not want to end my life." Like, he's got a disclaimer.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's kind of partisan.
Yeah, he is, but sometimes he brings up some interesting stuff.
He does. Definitely.
I'm trying to find this executive order. Hold on, so I can back up what I'm saying.
Well, they've had a series of things like that. I mean, it's just been kind of building. You know, he's kind of let Shabbat Lubavitch run his administration, does whatever they want, slip this stuff in.
Yep.
They've got a lot of intel on people, collected data on who the problems are, and they're probably noticing the shift in sentiment is going against them. And that's probably becoming very alarming because, when you get to a majority of your people that are opposed to these genocides and Israeli first wars, and that gets real problematic, and they can't really let that continue. We got to push back against it. And that can only mean terror, because they're not capable of winning the hearts and minds of people.
Yeah. That's true. So the background on this executive order was about qualified immunity. It basically giving law enforcement, giving that back to them, but at a bigger level than it was before.
Just let the law enforcement go around being thugs and goons.
Yeah. I'm trying to find it. If I find it, I'll send it to you. And you may be
that's the Israeli policing model, just a bunch of goons.
Yeah. So real quick,
we're all going to be Palestinians, in other words.
So you got the Diddy trial is going to start this week. You got any thoughts on that?
No, not really following that. No.
He's not going to take a plea deal, so it's going to trial. That's really interesting. I wonder if it'll be televised, if they're going to get artist sketches in the courtroom, which is what they did with the very strange, bizarre Ghislaine Maxwell trial.
What are they going to even let be entered as evidence?
Yeah, I mean, so it's another honey trap, right? I mean, there are people who you just pull in that thread, man. You pull in that thread, and all this shit starts to come unraveled. So it'll be interesting.
And then Virginia Guthrie just happened to commit suicide after saying she would never commit suicide. So that you got that going on. Guthrie, or whatever her name was, Guthrie.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. The whole thing seems like really, really weird. Really weird. And sometimes I just put a pause on some things at face value because I don't know. You don't know. We don't know. Maybe she did. I don't know. I don't. The whole thing is strange. And if it did happen, well, of course it makes sense because she's all
coming to a head again. I mean, it's kind of reemerging.
Yeah.
She's an important witness. I think they got her.
Could be. I mean, if they wanted to move somebody out, didn't they get one of the other ones too? There was another one. I think it was the one that claimed that Trump raped her. I think it was the one that came out in 2016. I forget her name. Anyway, Russ, we did it. Another one in the books.
We did it. Okay.
And thanks for staying on top of the tariff stuff. And I'm sure I'll get a bevy of comments claiming victories on the tariff side as well. They'll probably show up either in my direct messages on my phone or quite possibly on this YouTube channel.
You gotta have to get some replacements. It can't be 3 years from now. Meanwhile, you gotta have replacements of manufacturing and with skilled workers and feasibility studies and all the things involved. You can't just build something from nothing. That's just not realistic. So if people could show me something's being planned, even a year out.
I think you have to take this Honda thing seriously. For everything that we've talked about, they know what the fuck they're doing. They have a footprint here. It's not like they're just showing up. They have the manufacturing equipment, machinery. They have it down. They can import their own workforce if they need to. They could.
Okay, so there could be big wins for the Japanese, perhaps.
Yeah. So I think
because they know they know what they're doing. They know how to manufacture.
Absolutely. They could get a Honda plant up and running in 9 months.
Okay.
They could do that. And I'm going to circle back to Alberta. Keep your eye on Alberta. Alberta is critical, I think, to this whole power thing, and it's critical to whatever Trump is planning with Canada.
Well, he's got to start scoring some real wins. He's got to show up in the data, because right now we're entering into depression. Now, you can come out of a depression, but that's kind of hard when you've already indebted the country $37 trillion, and then they just increased government borrowing by another $200 billion. It's unbelievable. Now, some of this is inherited. I realize that.
Yeah.
But it's just a reality that you have to deal with, and you just can't be a fantasist all the time. And I'm afraid that's what Trump is. He's got sort of visions of things, but he doesn't know how to really execute it and bring it about.
Well, I think that Trump is one of these guys that, like, I just go back to his two teachers, his two main mentors. And one, of course, is Roy Cohn.
That speaks for itself.
Right. and the other guy is the guy that we talked about. What's his name? I always forget his name.
Vincent Peale.
Vincent Peale.
My parents made me read his book, and it's bullshit.
But that's his. But that is the visionary. That is the imaginary side of Trump. Like, you believe it and it'll happen.
Yeah. Right.
And then Roy Cohn comes in, and I'll fuck with you. I'll blackmail you. I'll do whatever it takes in order to get it done.
Yeah, I think that describes Trump. It really does. But I don't think it works.
Well, it's worked for him up to this point.
He's a turtle on a fence post. He's been placed there. He's had backers. He has had key backers throughout his career. He's had major business failures. Mostly he's a brand. He's been able to create this Trump brand, which is kind of a con to make money.
I just want to, again, I'm not here to, shovel coal for Trump, but I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and he went to Trump's Doral Resort, and he said, "Have you ever been there?" I said, "No." He said, "Oh my God, it's incredible." And he said, "No detail was left unattended to."
That was Ivanka that did that, though.
It doesn't matter, right? Like, theoretically, it comes from Trump. So there's something there. There is, like, I do think he has high standards for the things that he does create, or his family creates, or whatever. So I'm not so entirely. I mean, yeah, was his dad a real estate dude, mogul, and did he get carried along with that? Sure, absolutely. But I don't think you last long in that world if you can't do something.
Yeah, unless you have like total Rothschild backing, which he's had.
Now, he did overextend, right? When he went into the casino world, he overextended. And that's where this idea.
Well, he's had good transactions. Worldwide Wrestling, he got involved in that. That was a home run. So yeah, he's probably a reasonable investor. I mean, I can't say that he's not, but he also gets bailed out a lot, and he has access to capital.
Does get bailed out.
He's kind of an inside turtle on the fence post kind of guy, and that creates sort of an overrated persona that I think is being manifested right now. And something has happened to him. He's, the first term he was a reasonable guy. A lot of times, he just seems kind of like rattled. I don't know what's going on with him.
Well, I think he's kind of out for blood. Like this, he let himself get fucked over in the first term, and now you're getting a different side of Trump. And it is what it is.
Yeah.
All right, Russ. We'll see you in a month.
Yeah, stay safe, everybody.
And stay cool there. And you're part of the world, and I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. No shortage of material ever, right?
No. All righty, everybody. Good night.
All right, the great Russ Winter. There he is. Check him out at and stay up to date with his stories and research, and get on his RSS feed, get his email, get his newsletter. You will get really good geopolitical. What's the word I'm looking for? Steve Crimmy used to use the word crank or crack. We'll use that. Geopolitical crack. All right. Thanks for being here. Don't forget, True Hemp Science, sponsor of the show. Hit the like if you like it. Subscribe. Leave some comments here. The comments actually help drive the algorithm as well. And we'll be back on Sunday night with Sunday Night Astro Live. Always plenty to talk about. And until then, take care of yourselves, treat each other well. God bless, love you all. Robert Phoenix, signing off for now.